check in phone. Okay, cool. So, yes, hi everyone. I'm Bashish Patel, lead organizer of the UX Hackathon and GDSC Tech Lead in DDU. So, today we are going to discuss about open source. There are two subsequent sessions which are based on GitHub, and another one is based on the how you can utilize GitHub code space and how you can, set the CI/CD pipeline on and workflow on the GitHub, right? So yes, first of all, what is open source, right? So open source is basically we do some work for the people, for the community, right? So let's discuss. So it's in simple language, open source software is software whose source code is available to use and modify. So basically everyone can use the source code and everyone can modify it and everyone can use it, right? So, and yes, open source contribution involves development and improvement of the open source software. So basically the open source softwares are available to all. Any developers can visit the repo, and if he want, he can propose the changes in any manner that he want, right? In daily basis we are using some open source software without being aware about it. Like, so in daily basis we are using lots of open source software, just like Linux operating system. So Linux, all the Linux operating systems are open source. Android is open source. VLC Media Player is open source, and Chromium is open source. VS Code IDE is open source. WordPress Content Manager and many more such softwares, just like Apache and all that stuff, right? So yes, these all softwares like are open source. You can visit these repositories and do the changes whatever you want, right? And yes, you will surprised by knowing that the core of the mission in which human has landed on the moon for the first time was also open source. So you have heard it correctly. I'm talking about the mission Apollo 11. So the code which was used in Apollo 11 was also an open source, right? So, what is open source software, you may ask? So basically, civil organization make their software open source and public to use. Uh, those project don't have the pricing and all that stuff, right? So you can freely use it in your projects or any manner that you want, right? So yeah, anyone can inspect and modify the underlying code and use that one, right? So yes, open source softwares host their source code on Git servers, basically GitHub, GitLab, and Bitbucket. So these all are the version control systems on which the open source contribution is done, right? Where one can inspect it, look at the issues that exist, and try to solve them. So basically, let's say I want to contribute in one software which is Apache. So basically, if I visit the Apache repo, I'll find the tab called that issues, right? So basically, softwares can have the issues available in the repos, or else we can also check the code, and if we want to modify it, or if there is any upgradation, we can suggest them, right? Great. So the one thing is, why should I start contributing? So in the open source, there is no barriers, right? You can visit any softwares. You can visit, any repo that you want, any open source repo that you want. You can just type on the Google open source software, and you will get a bunch of list of the softwares, right? And yes, it also gives you the feedback on your programming skills, right? So that's something which is really cool, because you can taste your knowledge of your tech stacks, right? you work in the real world. The third point is you work in the real world. So basically, lots of people do the open source, and you can have uh, the competition of different software developers of different areas from the worldwide, right? So you receive the immediate feedback on your programming skills, and your code goes on to be used in real world applications. The main area where this differs from your personal project is if you are not pushing them to prod, they will never see the lights of the day. Cool. The fourth point is a very welcoming community. So, I mean, you can visit the repo, you can communicate with the developers, you can contact with them, you can try to, uh, discuss about the code and all that stuff, right? So that's the welcoming community. Every community, open source community, uh, you join, that's really awesome, right? uh, and the fifth one is level up your Git game. So that's something which is really cool because you can learn GitHub much more in the deeper way, right? So that's the cool point. You can learn the GitHub, how it works, how the open source contribution works, how we can manage the issues, PRs, and all that stuff, right? Sixth point is build that profile. So, I mean, you can build your profile, you can add this open source contribution to your resume, and that's a plus point. That's a very big plus point in the profile, right? So your open source profile will be noticed people in the field, and it counts as an actual work experience, right? So that's the thing. And the seven point is network. It means that you can expand your network. You can, you can connect with the people outside of India. I mean, if you are from India, outside from India, and outside of different regions, right? So that's really something cool, and that will help you in your placements as well, right? So that's a cool thing. The question is, how do I contribute thought, right? So how I can contribute to the open source. So there are similar things to keep in mind. It's not just code. It's not just, solving the issues and, uh, fixing things, right? So these are the similar points that you have to keep in mind, that you can fix the typos in the documentation. So let's say if I'm in the I'm seeing the any documentation of any software. So at the time, there are also documentation which are really new and they need some improvements. There would be typos, mistakes. There would be, the tutorials remaining to add them. So you can do that all stuff in the open source, and that work would be counted in your, in your experience, right? The second point is bug fixing. So you can fix the bugs in your applications, right? In the open source applications. So that's the main point, that you have to fix the bugs, because the softwares will be available direct will be available there, and you have to just modify it. You have to improve that application, right? There are automated tests. So once you do the PR, do the pull request, there will be automated test that would be checking your PR, right? So that's something you have to, explore more, right? Another thing is implementing future requests. So, I mean, that's a cool thing, that you can add new features in the applications, right? And the last thing is code reviews. So basically, once you submit the pull request, the maintainers of that open source software will review your code, right? And then only they will review your code. They will suggest any edits if there are, right? So that's something which includes the open source, right? So cool. So there are some guidelines that you can follow right? There is no specific guidelines, but I mean, I have some bunch of guidelines that you can follow for the open source contribution. So the one thing is every good things takes time. I mean, let's consider that there is an open source program called Hacktoberfest. So do not aim for merging 5 years by the end of October, right? So there is a open source program, Hacktoberfest, in which you have to merge 5 pull requests, and if you merge them, then you will get some awesome goodies and stickers from the DigitalOcean. That is, I mean, the Hacktoberfest is organized by DigitalOcean, right? So that you have to keep in mind that don't just do some work for just doing. I mean, for like in the Hacktoberfest, if I tell in the context of Hacktoberfest, don't just do the merging the PR for the swags, right? Uh, the other thing is get acquainted with Git command line and issues PR workflow before starting to contribute. So the essential thing in open source is to learn GitHub, right? Git and GitHub. So you have some basic knowledge about Git and GitHub because all the source code or open source software are available on GitHub or Bitbucket, right? And for that, you have to learn the version control system. So you have the knowledge of a thoroughly knowledge of version control system, right? The other thing is contribute to a software that you have worked with in the past. Start with good first issues. So I mean, that's a cool thing. Like in the issues of the GitHub, you will have the different types of issues available there. So these good first issues, if you are the new to the open source, so go with these good first issues because I mean they are the beginner ones. You can, I mean, if you have the basic knowledge of coding, you can fix those issues in the software, right? And yeah, so there are also intermediate and advanced issues as well. So you can work upon them, right, if you have the expertise. And the last thing is ask for help whenever you stop. So don't hesitate to ask your queries during the contribution. So basically, you are not understand if you are not understanding one any code snippets, you can directly ask in that issue, right? So that's how you will learn something new from the code, from the people out there, right? And yeah, so it's a large part about engaging with the community, asking for helping and guiding the people as well. So if you are the expert in the building code, in the building software, so you can guide some people who are new to the open source, right? So yeah, these are some cool things that you can keep in mind, right? uh, so how to make the most out of open source contribution. So basically, do not stop after the event. So basically, if you are participating in one open source event, so let's say there are different types of open source events, like this the one is Hacktoberfest, which is organized by DigitalOcean in the month of October, right? There are several beginner friendly programs like Gulf Script Summer of Code, Gulf Script Winter of Contributing. Um, there is also another program called Gulf Script Blockchain. Like there is a program for the blockchain as well. Google of Summer of Code, right? Google of Docs. Google, like there is one also a program called Google Summer of Docs, right? So you can check out them on the Google, right? So the main thing is do not stop contributing after the event. So if you are participating in the event, do not stop to contribute, right? Constantly work in the field of open source to build something, right? So learn about Git and keep building your knowledge. So it's not just like you if you learn Git, you will learn everything in the code, right? So the different softwares works on different technologies. So you have to learn new tech stacks based upon the software that you are contributing, right? So yes, the cool thing is swags. So we all love swags, right? So swags are offered as a complement to your achievements, right? So if you build something cool, if you fix something cool, you will get some cool swags, some cool, I mean, goodies from that software community, right? And you should keep in mind that they are not our goal. Our goal is to learn something new out of from that software, from building and from engaging with the people, right? So this is the thing, that learning experience is should be your takeaway, right? Cool. So yeah, that was the bit in a small introduction about open source. uh, if you want, we can connect on the Twitter, on the GitHub. So this one is my Twitter ID, Koshish Patel underscore, and this one is my GitHub ID. uh, yes, if you have any questions regarding the open source, you can ping me on LinkedIn. You will find my LinkedIn on my GitHub profile, right? And also you can just DM directly. You can DM me on my Twitter as well, right? So yeah, that's it from my side. I'm finishing my session on the open source. So the next session is about, I guess, Git and GitHub, right? So that would be conducted by my other fellow, right? So yeah, thank you so much.
So, hey guys, today we are going to discuss about all about the GitHub Actions that we are having. So, just screen share. So, so in this session we are going to see about all about GitHub Actions. So, basically, what is GitHub Actions? So, in GitHub Actions provides automated system to customize your developer tools. Right. So, what is first of all, what is GitHub Actions? So, as we have discussed, it is automated developer workflow that we can customize on our based on our projects, based on our like the repositories we have in GitHub. So, what first of all, many of you are having doubt what is developers workflow. So, development workflow can help your team organize and ensure that it is easy for everyone to make changes in the repository, and work done by all of the members in the team should be merged out well. So it is not all about merging the code, right? What developers workflow consists is, like, suppose take an example that we have big organization and we have one project in that, and many of the open source contributors are working. Like, we have a repository for Kubernetes, we have a repository for Docker, and many of the contributors are working on that. So we have to perform set of organization tasks on that. So for an example, if we take an example that one big project is working on, and there are 3,000 open source contributors that are working on it. So if someone raise a pull request, or someone wants to merge his or her code into the organization, we have to perform some step of sort of the organization task. Like, we have to see if a code is working properly or not. If it is working, then it is integrating to our previous version or not. So for that, we have only few maintainers. Like, if you some of you guys have been contributing in open source, you know that there are few number of maintainers that maintains the repository and reviews the PRs and all. So to take that burdens on the developers of the project, remove that particular burdens, we have set up the developer workflow, right? So if you have built the code and you want to merge, so we have to perform some sort of tasks. For an example, if code that we are merging is integrating properly or not. So for that we have to perform some tasks, and we cannot say that developer has to do that, because if developers will do that task, then they will not have enough time to develop their project, right? So for that we have some maintainers in the repository. Now maintainers knows all about what is going on in the project, what PRs are going to raise, what are the types of issues they can review that. They know all about the source code, so they can have the checks. But they should not have all the burdens. Like if someone is raising pull requests for editing just the technical document of the project, like we have readme files on the projects, so that issue should be labeled, right? So developer maintainers should focus on the only things that are related to the source codes, not about any other things. So what we will do, we will create one developer workflow using continue integration, continue deployment, and we will perform some step of tests, like if file name is proper or not, that type of tests we will put into that. So we don't need that extra person who is going to labeling that, who is going to be reviewing that. We just need that maintainer will only look for the source code. All other things we should be automated. So for that purpose, we have introduced the developer workflow, and developer workflow can be of many types. And in GitHub Actions, what GitHub Action does is automates the developer workflow. Right now, there is misconception. Many of them things like GitHub Actions can only automate the CI/CD workflow, which is continue integration and continue deployment workflow. But it is not true. You can also implement some other workflows on that. So for now, in this particular session, we are going to take an example of CI/CD workflow, how continue integration, continue deployment is a kind of workflow, developer workflow, how that is going to work, and how we can integrate that into GitHub Actions, right? So, so we have CI/CD pipeline. So what pipeline does is, you have a particular kind of source code. We have built a continue integration pipeline and continue deployment pipeline on our project, right? So if someone is merging some code into the repository, then it should be performed some unit tests. So the unit tests would be performed on that particular code. Now integration tests should be also performed on that, because you cannot directly integrate that. If we take an example that one feature, we have to add one feature which is consisting another features as a subtask of that particular feature. So we have to also think about that how this particular feature will be integrated into our source code. So for that we have to perform set of tasks. Like if you are merging that, it is all the previous functions are running perfectly or not, how it is going to integrate that. That test should be constructed by the developers only, but we will create that particular tests and we will include into the continue integration pipeline. So whenever someone will commit or want to merge the code, then CI pipeline, means continue integration pipeline, will be active, and that will perform some sort of tests on that, integration test on that. And if that particular source code is successfully running that particular pipeline, then only he will be able to merge that particular code. Now, what is continued deployment pipeline? So we all know that most of the applications on the websites run on the containers, right? So for an example, we have one shopping application, and we have deployed into the cloud. So that particular that particular code will be running on the containers. So let's just not go into detail about what is container. For now, you can take like container is a sort of package that will consist all of the dependencies of the project, including the database, including the OS, and it will run on any system. So in Google also they are using containers that will run your particular application. So whenever the user will request for that particular application, one container for that application will run. So now we will come to the CD pipeline. So for CD, what we are going to do is now the code is merged into our repository or our uh, source code. But what we have to do is we have to release one new version of that. For like we have seen, all of the versions are getting updated for Chrome browser or any particular software. So if someone has merged that pull request, that should be affected into our main project also. So that consists a part of CD pipeline. So it will review your code, stage the changes that you have done, run some production task on that, and it will deploy it in one container. So it will be taken as like a second version of that particular software. So if someone is merging that, so full CI/CD pipeline is working like that. So we have one shopping application. Someone of us like open source contributor had added some new feature into that. Now CI pipeline will integrate that particular code into our source code, and then it will release new version of our shopping application, right? So this is all about how CI/CD pipeline works. So you will have one question like, why to use GitHub Actions, right? You can also implement CI/CD pipeline using other kind of tools that you can see here, like for the source code control or having a track of your version, you can use GitHub. And for integration, CI pipeline, you have to use some particular tools like Jenkins that will create your continuous integration pipeline, then Docker that will create your Docker image that will be pushed into the Docker hub. And whenever you request for the particular application, it will make one container and run into the cloud. And for develop CD pipeline, you have to use other like Microsoft Azure. You need a server for running container, right? So Microsoft Azure or AWS will be going into that particular. Now, why we will use GitHub Actions? So first is it is really easy to integrate GitHub CI/CD pipeline using GitHub Actions in our repository. We just need to create one folder .github, and in that we have to create one directory called workflows, and you can all have your particular workflows or tasks that you have to perform. And first, second thing, the complexity that you will face to implement CI/CD pipeline using other tools is really high. Like if you have created a Node.js application, then you have to create one Docker image out of that. Then you have to push into the Nexus repository. And for hosting that into the web, you will use DigitalOcean. So that is the process that you will follow to use CI/CD pipeline in your project if you are not using GitHub Actions. Second, if you want to build a Java project, then Java project, and then you have to perform some integration test into that. You have to create a Docker image out of that. You have to have Amazon Web Services repository on that. And for hosting that, you have to run AWS EKS instance for that. And so you can see that how complex is that to create your CI/CD pipeline using other tools and not using GitHub Actions. And what we will do in GitHub Actions? Nothing. Just we will add one action into that into repository.git/workflows, and we are ready to go. And GitHub provides us some basic actions ready for some particular uh, tech stacks. Like if you want to build a Java project, then there is already action created for that by GitHub organization. So you just have to use that particular job when you have to build your CI/CD pipeline. So it is really easy. it is really easy to integrate the other action in your if you are using GitHub Action. So GitHub Actions will provide us really super cool interface that we can build any sort of development workflow. For now, we are seeing CI/CD workflow. So for CI/CD, it's really easy. So now you might be having like how GitHub workflow works. GitHub Action works in to create workflows, right? So in GitHub Actions, what we have is to trigger one particular action, we will have some sort of events. So for an example, if someone is merging into your repository, then you want to perform some particular tasks. So here you can see the runner. Here you can see the syntax of that. Like we have to perform these particular jobs, and we runs on. So runs on is an event, GitHub event that will trigger your workflow. So and after that event is occurring, our workflow is going to trigger. So we have to take some particular actions on into that. So we have to mention all of the actions we have to take in our YAML file of our workflow. So we are going to see the syntax and how we can customize your workflows on that. For now, just focus upon how GitHub Actions workflow works on server, right? So for each workflow, GitHub will run one GitHub runner server. So if you have three workflows, so it will create one workflow. You will, if you have three jobs, then for each job, there will be one GitHub runner server that will be running. Why we need that particular runner server? Because at any particular time instance of time, someone will merge and we have to perform some actions. So we have to run one server continuously for checking that if this particular event is happening or not. And if that particular event is happening, then we have to perform some sort of actions on that, right? So for each jobs, you will have separate GitHub runner servers. So for example, in this presentation, you can see that one workflow consisting three jobs. Then all three jobs will have their separate runners, GitHub runners working for it. So that will be the part where how GitHub Actions is working in internal. So now now the question is how you can set up your own workflow, right? We have learned about how workflows can help us to build CI/CD pipelines and all, but the question is how we can set up our own workflow. So for that, what you are going to do is you will have some particular events on that you want to perform some actions. So we will see in the documentation of GitHub workflows. So how we can customize your workflows and based upon your projects or repositories. So you can just have the documentation. GitHub provides us really cool documentation. If you are reading the documentation thoroughly, you don't need anything, right? Resources provided on GitHub documents are really strong. So for workflows, I have opened the tab. So what is workflow? So workflow is a configurable automatic process that will run one or more jobs, as we have seen before. So workflows are defined in a YAML file checked in your repository and will run triggered by event in your repository. And they can trigger manually also. So if you run that, you can manually also trigger that. So all the workflows will be defined into your github.github/workflow directory. So that is the default thing that you have to follow, because how GitHub will know that here are the workflows that I have to consider. So for that, it is fixed that you all the workflows you want should be on .github/workflows only. So what we are going to do? So workflow consists event and actions, right? So what are the events that can trigger to run a workflow. So you can see here that all the available events, like uh, a branch is created, branch is edited, branch is deleted. So we can have a particular tags on that. Like we have one section called brand protection, and all in all brand protection. So here on specifies that on which particular event you want to trigger that particular workflow, right? And if you want to check suits for the repository, then you can also perform. If you want to create, if someone creates a PR, then also you can run. So all of the events are specified over here. You can check that into the. For example, let's look into that. So on issue comment. So if someone will comment on your issue, we want to perform jobs named as PR committed, and we will check condition like if event github dot event dot issue dot pull request means if someone has created a pull request, then we want to build a GitHub runner on Ubuntu OS. So the GitHub runner server will run onto Ubuntu. So we can have multiple options, like you can also create macOS server also, GitHub runner server also, or we can have Windows or Mac, any you can have. So what we are doing, so steps specifies that what will be the steps that we will do to execute that particular workflow. So we will see like echo a command on PR number. So it will display that which particular PR is that is requested. So and in this we have specified name and all. So you can check the syntax. The syntax follows YAML files. Now YAML is a serializable language. So YAML, what YAML consists is YAML consists a documentation or a data. So this YAML file will consist all things like what will be the type of runner, what particular on what particular OS it will run, what are the steps that have to be triggered. So you have to perform YAML. You have to have learn YAML syntax if you want to customize your particular workflow. So now what YAML file consists is data, like which kind of servers and you want to run. So what internally task will be executed is YAML is consisting all the data that these all the requirements. So during the deserialization of this particular file, it will create a runner objects, GitHub runner objects on the server. So the runners will be created on base of this particular YAML file configuration, and that in the next presentation you are going to see how to create your own workflow. So you can check that out. So you can have like workflow syntax, what is the workflow syntax, and what are the commands that you can use for the workflow, how you can reuse your workflow, required workflow. So for now we can see we will see some basic syntax of GitHub Actions. So you can see like on. So on will specify on which particular event you want to trigger your workflow, right? And in on we can have multiple events. So you can create array in YAML. Now using activity types. So if a particular PR is created, deleted, that you can see over here. If you want to like filter that particular using some tags that you have applied on your PR, all of that thing you can do. So on will only specify on which event you want to trigger, right? So let's just so yes. So how to trigger that particular workflow? We have seen some events that can trigger your workflow, right? Creating a PR. Also, you can schedule your workflow to run. So for scheduling that particular thing, we have YAML. In YAML file, we have some time syntax for them. So time syntax will consist of 5 stars. Now, what 5 stars is? First star will consist the time in minute, like in on 30 minute I want to perform this task. The second star will be for hours, which is from 0 to 23, on which hour 30 on which hour 30 minute we have to perform the task. The third is what is the month for that. So 0 to 11 we can have all the months and on, and the last one is for on which days, like which days of week we have to specify that particular schedule. So if you are putting stars on that, then it will run for all. Like if you have specified star here, so it will run all the days, weekdays and weekend. If you want to specify some particular days, like here we have specified to run that particular, trigger that particular schedule for 1 1 to 3 only. So on that particular week only, they will run that. So here are all the brainstorming examples. You can see how to trigger that particular event and all. And you can see here workflow commands. And so you might have seen like here is my readme file. So in readme file, you have seen like this kind of contribution images that is automatically updated on your GitHub repository, that will create your SVG file, and you just need to specify the URL for that SVG, and it will be updated automatically. So we will see the syntax of my file so you can have idea about it. So as we have discussed before, your repo name .github/workflows and your YAML file. So I've created one profile 3D YAML. We have specified the name for the workflow, and we have specified event. So now I want that on this particular time my images should be updated, right? So I have created one schedule for that, and I have specified time for that. So at 18 UTC at every day and 0 minutes. So means 18 UTC sharp, my event is going to be my workflow is going to be triggered, and for all, like all the days and all, I have taken as stars. And what are the jobs it is doing? So the particular runner is running on Ubuntu latest. So we will GitHub will create a runner on Ubuntu base. Now the name of the job is generate GitHub profile 3D config. And what are the steps that you are going to perform? So in steps, what cool feature GitHub provides is GitHub has some predefined actions that has been contributed by some contributors and also from the GitHub organization that you can directly use. So for if you want to update that image, then first of all you have to check out that your particular profile, that what are the contributions that have been done and all. So for that particular event, we have been already provided by GitHub. So if you will type like github.com/actions.checkout, and it is of version 3, so you can see what are the tasks it is doing. So and one another uh, action that I'm using is I have taken from somewhere, which is creating the SVG file. So it will take out the data, what are the contribution I've done, in which language I've done, and it will create SVG file. So it is one type of access only. And we want some environment variables that will give the access for the Git. So we have to provide GitHub tokens. We have to provide username for that. And what it is doing is it is running some commands like git config username dot GitHub Actions, git config username dot email GitHub Actions at the rate, and it is adding the changes. It is committing the changes into the repository and then pushing it. So here is the syntax for it. So it will create automatically generate a 3D contribution graph for me. So these all things you can customize yourself and have it in your repositories and in your repositories. So we have seen all about events and how you can perform it. from Git Actions. So now I will handing over to Ayush, which will be going to show you a hands-on demo and how you can create your own noise and how you can do it. So moving to Ayush.
will auto comment on any new issue that is created on this repo. So let us go through that. So okay, so workflow must be defined in the .git.workflows file. So let us create that one. So .flows. Okay, and file names will be yeah. So yeah, so basically the workflow must contain the whole basic component that one or more event that should be there, one or more job that can execute on a runner, or one or more step that can in which each script is running on the virtual machine. So let us create one workflow first. We are triggering this event on every new issue that is created on this repo. So let us provide issue. And we are going to provide the GitHub token. So we have to provide the permissions and write all and jobs that we are running on that virtual machine. So it will be jobs, and we are going to run watching on Linux servers. So run on Ubuntu and steps that we are running on that. We are using the external workflow file that is basically providing that set of available access event, or we can say event that is supported by this external workflow. The workflow is wow actions dot photo command. So we can visit the available event that is provided in this. So yeah, provide available events that is this man. You can visit and explore. I'm going to use this issue of one event and provide it. So whichever event, whichever trigger, you can just copy and paste the which trigger. we are using issue open. So, so YAML syntax is almost similar to the Python, but we have to make sure the indentation is correct. Okay. YAML, we are going to write a message. Thanks for creating your first issue. And yeah, let's commit and see if it works. Something. Okay. Okay, let me check it. Page values. Still, I think indentation error. No. Okay, let me just copy and so so working file. Okay, we are currently using this one. So it's basically the same. Okay, I think we are not using the runs on that many. Okay, yeah. So that is the spelling mistake. Okay, let us just comment this. Okay. So let us create first issue. Let us see action is running. Okay, so it started running on Ubuntu server. Okay, done. So yeah, it's pasting the comment like hello. I use thanks for creating issue. we can whatever the text message that you have written here, that will be shown to this. So yeah, that's it from workflow file. And yeah, another thing that I want to say that currently GitHub has scaled their code space and virtual machine that's on the server. So they are providing code space that basically the Docker container that is some one of the GitHub server, and it is watching machine that runs on Ubuntu. So currently it is not Ubuntu, and only you can run on Ubuntu. So it provides the template, predefined template that you can use, and you can basically use without any of the wasting of your resource. You can use remote resource without so there is no lag basically. So let us just create one code space. You can either use a template or create a new code space from your existing repository. So you can use your existing repo, and it's provide basically the two options like 2 core and 4 core. This is the resource that is provide. Only the more resources are also available, but that is not currently available to everyone. But you can it is more than sufficient to use. So it is basically the same ID that we are using on our local machines. So let us just create from one template. Okay, so let us use this React template. And yeah, it's like let's see the running works here code spaces from here. Yeah, it's set up. So everything that you are doing in your local machine using VS Code, you can do all this stuff without even wasting single resources on this code space. So yeah, it is saving the resources, and we can maximize the source, and it's good, like pretty cool. You can even change machine time after creating the code space. And let us just run once it's set up. So it is a React project. So great tool that you can use and maximize your pro pack of GitHub. I think you everybody is know the GitHub developer package provide the pro pack of your. You can visit the developer pack profile in the university GitHub. Like GitHub education is still setting. Change my network. Probably. Okay. Anyway, so like you can explore this stuff by yourself because our network is slow. I can't proceed further because. So yeah, that's it from my side, and hope you like this session. And yeah, follow us on Twitter, LinkedIn, and yeah, you can comment it. You can say post you maybe with the swags and other things. Hope this is. Yeah, that's it.